What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. I'm Wyatt Bagnall, and today I'm going to be giving you my instant reaction to the NFL's Week 6 slate. It was a really good week, really interesting week, a couple of crazy upsets. And to start off, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of how I did picking the games this week. So I went 9-5, which not too bad. Could be better, though. There was a couple games that injuries really sort of did me in, and I'm realizing a trend, which is the morning slate never goes my way, and then the afternoon and primetime games, awesome. So I'm gonna have to really hone in on those morning ones. I'm not exactly sure what's causing that. But to get started, we start off with the Thursday night game, which was the Washington Commanders at the Chicago Bears. The Commanders win 12-7. And this was a game that sort of went according to plan. It was two bad teams battling it out. It didn't go great. Washington won on the back of sloppy offense and not great defense, but Chicago's offense was sloppy as well. Neither one played well. Chicago missed several red zone opportunities that would have won them the game, and they still almost pulled it out at the end, but they missed it by about a yard. Well, I mean, really by like an inch, but I'm not even sure if the guy came down in bounds with it, even if he had caught it. These are two teams that I think are going to be battling for the first overall pick, and in regards to that, I mean, Washington came out ahead. Chicago is winning enough games that they might play themselves out of the draft spot that they need. I think they'll still lose the majority of their games, but at least to open up the year, they've stolen a few games that they really shouldn't. And if I'm the Bears, I'm strongly considering just throwing in the towel. I know none of these teams ever say they're going to tank, but sometimes that really is like the quickest road to prosperity. And in the NFL in particular, that's true, especially this year with the likes of Bryce Young and CJ Stroud coming out. I'm not sure if the Bears are ready to give up on Justin Fields yet. I'm not sure I would be either, especially given that they haven't supported him at all. But this game was not this game didn't help. If you thought lowly of him, you're going to come out of this game still feeling pretty low. Good for Washington. They got the win. Sloppy win. Ugly win. They beat maybe the worst team in the league. So good for them. I mean, not the worst. Carolina's probably the worst. But yeah, good for the Commanders, I guess. The commies strike again. Good on them. On to the Sunday slate. We're going to start off with the Baltimore Ravens at the New York Giants. Ravens 20, Giants 24. Now, I said last week that if the Giants won this game, I would no longer think that they're like a bad team that's a total pretender. And I will stand by that. I think the Giants are a good team. I think the Giants are a team that's going to make the playoffs. I still believe the Giants are punching above their weight a little bit, which, hey, that's totally fine. I think the Giants, in a lot of ways, are this year's version of the Tennessee Titans last year, where they managed to just keep winning these games, but when it really comes down to it in the playoffs, I don't think they're going to really stand much of a chance. Maybe they will. Maybe all of a sudden they'll evolve into this really awesome team, but they just don't have the horses on offense to really consistently do this. This game more, to me, concerned me about Baltimore, which is this is now the third game that they've blown a double-digit lead in. They led by 10 points in this game. That is not a great sign. I still think that they're the best in the North, or the AFC North. I still think that they'll win that division. They'll make the playoffs. But the calling card of the Ravens was always, if they get ahead of you, they can grind you out and you're not going to catch them. They can't play from ahead right now. Their run game is not played just on the whole. Their run game has struggled. Their O-line is sort of rounding back into form with Ronnie Stanley getting back in. He was on a pitch count last week. He played more this week, especially with the injury at the other tackle spot. And they got a good center in Linderbaum, the rookie, but they're not running great. I think a lot of that is they don't have weapons on the outside that are going to threaten everybody, so everyone's just going to overcommit to the run, and that's great because nobody at wide receiver is going to cause them to look out there, be worried. So I think Baltimore, for example, if there is a team like the Carolina Panthers that might be looking to sell some parts, Robbie Anderson just got traded today, which, that's whatever. But that's not the type of piece the Ravens would want. If I was the Ravens, I'd be inquiring about DJ Moore pretty heavily. Rashad Bateman hasn't been able to stay healthy so far. Those are the things that Baltimore really needs. As for the Giants, though, good on them. They're holding their own, and in an NFC that's been wildly inconsistent. The Giants are now 5-1, and I think that we can maybe not. We don't have to lock it in or anything, but we can sort of pencil them in for one of those playoff spots. The NFC East looks like it's going to put out 3 playoff teams, which is wildly shocking. So good for them. I think the NFL is better when it's like traditionally great franchises are playing well, and it's good to see the Giants return to form because they are one of those franchises. Now moving on to Jacksonville at Indianapolis. Jags 27, Indy 34. I guess you could say Indy got over the hump of Jacksonville. However, it's really a matter of they can't win in Jacksonville. Beating the Jags in Indianapolis hasn't been the problem. The Jags are frustratingly inconsistent. They spent a ton of money this offseason, and now they're 2-4. That's not okay. I think that they need to really take a hard look at their front office, because this was a game where Trevor Lawrence actually played pretty well. I think he only had 2 incompletions in the whole game, and the Jags scored 27. That'll do with a young offense playing the way that they've been playing. That's a positive sign overall. But Indy's so annoying. They're gonna win a couple of these games and be able to hang around, and maybe I don't think that they will make the playoffs at this point. They haven't played well enough. But I mean, this is a division that's completely wide open. If they can go and they can split with Tennessee, nothing's impossible. Somebody has to win the AFC South. Could be the Colts. It's not going to be the Texans. It's not going to be the Jags. I mean, they're just an uninspiring team that might end up stealing a playoff spot from another team that deserves one. So I just don't like the AFC South in general because of that. It's just somebody has to win this damn division, and it could be Indy, could be Tennessee. They're both disgusting. Yeah, I'm not going to waste too much time on Jags Colts. I mean, this is just Jacksonville needs to really evaluate the people that they've brought in, because it should be better than this. So, yeah. New England at Cleveland. Pats 38, Browns 15. What the hell, man? I am done picking Cleveland. They were staying feisty, and they were losing some games close, but their defense just isn't good enough right now. With their offense, with Brissett, it's not dynamic enough. It's either they're going to be able to like bulldoze people in the running game, or they're not going to win. And the Patriots played well enough for them not to win. The Patriots dominated them. There's a lot of controversy right now, apparently, of will Mac Jones get his starting job back, or will Bailey Zappi keep it? I have no idea. This is different from the Dallas situation in that Mac Jones doesn't make a ton of money. Mac Jones is not this like super inspiring option at quarterback, but he's not a bad option either. I don't know, man. I think that you give the job back to Mac Jones, at least for a bit. And if they don't look how they've looked the last 2 weeks, which is surprisingly efficient, then you can take his job away and give it to Bailey Zappi. But I think this is a little too quick to be pulling the trigger on stuff like that. Myles Garrett played amazing, but the other 10 guys didn't. And yeah, this game is more an indictment on the Browns than it is like an endorsement of the Patriots. The Patriots, to me, still are a team that are extremely flawed. They still have no weapons. They are well coached, obviously. They play good defense. That's all well and good. But you would expect a team as talented as the Browns to be able to corral them to some extent, and they can't. That is a very, very concerning sign. And that is coaching. They need to be better on defense. They have to. Otherwise, they won't win. They have no chance. And with that being said, with everything I've seen from the Browns, I think it's pretty safe to say they're going to miss the playoffs this year. I think them and the Steelers in the AFC North are sunk. They're both gone. And the Patriots, they remain alive, but it's not by any impressive margin. And I don't think that they're going to be a real player by the end of the year. But as I said, Cleveland, this was a sad showing for a team that needed to try to keep itself around 500. Otherwise, their season was over. Deshaun Watson could show up in Week 11, but he's going to be showing up after essentially not playing football for 2 years, and it's going to take probably a game or two for him to really get back in the flow of things. And this team's just not—they're not built right now to even make it that far and be competitive. So unfortunate, but I think it's over for the Brownies. Brownie the Elf can go home. Next up, Cincinnati at New Orleans. Bengals 30, Saints 26. To me, this is the battle of the two completely middling teams. I think both these teams will end up 8-9, 9-8 type of range. The Saints continue to battle, but they can't win the close ones. And with Jameis out, they just don't have the horses to compete with somebody like Cincinnati on offense. Granted, the Bengals are nothing to be scared of. Jamar Chase made a crazy play at the end. But other than that, it's the Bengals offense is pretty straightforward. There's not a ton to worry about other than they got 2-3 good receivers, one great one, obviously, with Chase. But their O-line is still not something I have a lot of faith in. And they're uninspiring on defense, and they're uninspiring with their scheme on offense. So I think the Bengals can beat a lot of these middling to mediocre teams, but when they run into the really good teams, they're never going to pull it off, I don't think. So that's really all I have to take away from this one is these teams are really sort of on the same level. The difference is the Saints were playing their backups for a large part of this game. So good for Cincinnati. They got the win. They stay alive. In terms of record, they're back tied atop the AFC North. Of course, Baltimore has the tiebreaker over them. So I think that's a division that'll probably be sort of battled down to the latter third to fourth of the season, with Baltimore ultimately taking it from them. But yeah, good for the Bengals. They got the win. They needed a win. Got one. Good on them. Tampa Bay at Pittsburgh, Bucks 18, Steelers 20. This game is all about the Buccaneers. I'll give the Steelers some credit for being resilient and all those things. The Steelers are not a team that any of us are going to be talking about late into the season. Tampa Bay might be just by default because the rest of the division's not, but I'm officially panicking about Tampa Bay. They are in trouble. Their offense is not clicking. Their defense is not clicking either. Their defense started out the year on fire, but it has taken several steps back, and they still can't score at all on offense. No touchdowns. It's really, really not good. Their O-line, the injuries have caught up to them in a lot of ways. They're not protecting Tom Brady. We all saw him, ripping into them on the sideline. But it's also, the Steelers had an entirely backup secondary, and we couldn't exploit that with, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Russell Gage, any of those guys. None of them. That's not something that should be happening. You have to wonder, is it a coaching thing? Is it now that Bruce Arians isn't there, they're just not attacking the same? Possibly. I don't really care what it is. They can't run the ball. They can't protect. And as a result, they're not able to take advantage of the opportunities down the field. This is a huge problem. Tampa Bay will not, they won't beat any contending teams this way. I thought they had a chance to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl, but if they don't get this fixed quick, fast, and in a hurry, no chance. I think Tampa should be active around the trade deadline, specifically looking for offensive pieces, mostly along the offensive line, because the injuries are just piling up and they can't do a damn thing about it. So, yeah, it's just not great. Kenny Pickett even went out in this game with an injury. It was Mitch Trubisky that ended up putting the nail in the coffin for Tampa Bay. And that is not a sentence I ever thought I would say. So, yeah, Steelers, they got to win. Good on them. 2-4. I think they're still heading for a losing season. It's not the Steelers' way to ever look to rebuild or ever view it like that, but I think they need to. But again, I respect them. I don't expect it from the Steelers to be okay, it's all right if we lose some games and stuff like that. The Steelers are not that team. As I said, this game is an indictment on Tampa. Tampa's not where they need to be, and they need to really, really get it figured out right now. Their season is not going to be over by any means, just by virtue of the fact that their division is not that strong. But these are the type of games where we saw what Buffalo did to Pittsburgh. That's a legit contender. We saw what they did, and Tampa couldn't even beat them. So I don't feel that great about Tampa Bay. As I said, not over. It's not going to be over. But they got to get this figured out if they want to compete for anything more than just a first-round exit in the playoffs. Next up, San Francisco at Atlanta. San Fran 14, Atlanta 28. Injuries are the tale or like the story of the game for the 49ers. Again, I mean, it was something like 8 or 9 of 11 starters were out on defense. And then it was like they came into the game with 5 starters out on offense. By the end of the game, it was like, or 4 out on offense. And by the end of the game, it was like 6. So they're missing over half of their projected starting lineup. And against a feisty team like Atlanta, it just won't do. It's just a disappointing game, man. Jimmy G didn't play awful. And some of his interceptions, like the one at the end of the first half, that's acceptable. You're just throwing it up. Like, okay, fine. That happens. The problem that I have right now with the 49ers, I can accept the fact that their defense didn't play great this game. As I said, when you are out 8 to 9 of your projected starters on defense, it's not going to go awesome. You know what I mean? But what I can't stand is the fact that this offense is mostly healthy and still not able to put up more than 14 points. Their weapons were all healthy. Brandon Ayuk played well, 2 touchdowns. They all had like Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle all had in like the 70 to 80 yard receiving range. So they all were like evenly distributed and making plays and all that type of stuff, but there was no scoring involved. The points just didn't come. And against the Falcons, I expect the points to come. Especially like there's the one game where your defense really needs you to help them out, and they couldn't put up more than 14 points. That's what concerns me about the 49ers. I still think the 49ers are good, and this is a game where injuries just struck them all at once, and it was just too much for them to overcome. But I still think that you got to get more than 14 points, right? I could have accepted if we lost 28-21. I'm still not happy about it, but whatever. But to not even hit 20 that's a problem. As for the Falcons, though, credit to them. They ground out a gritty game. They're playing shockingly well. They're not the worst team in the league like a lot of people thought they might be. They're still feisty as ever. Listen, if they hadn't lost to Tampa Bay, I'd say that they have like a legitimate chance of like just being that team that lucks their way into a playoff spot essentially. But I think that'd be a little bit disrespectful to say that what they're doing is luck. They're doing it a little bit with smoke and mirrors, but nobody's stopping it. And they're showing that they're able to do really, really impressive stuff against teams that are theoretically better. So Falcons win, 49ers hurt. Those injuries are something you're going to have to monitor in San Francisco. Unfortunately, this has been a consistent thing with the 49ers. And personally, I have a lot of questions as to why it keeps happening with them. But that's something I'll go into like much more into depth with when I break down all the games with Taylor this week. And we'll just see how that I can't, as a 49ers fan, it's so frustrating to see it consistently happen. But I mean, I can live with the fact we gave up points this week. I can't live with the fact that we didn't score any. So moving on, New York Jets at Green Bay Packers. Jets 27, Packers 10. I actually called this one. I was a little hesitant, but I stuck with it, went with the Jets, and they proved me right. Thank goodness. The Jets I don't know exactly how great they are, but I do know that they are vastly improved from last year. And their young pieces are playing well. I think they're probably playing like a year ahead of schedule in a lot of ways, sort of like the Bengals were last year, in my opinion, which is this is a team that still has holes and still has flaws, but they're playing way better than they should, and they have any right to, but good on them. Maybe this means that those players really are that good. Maybe this means that teams weren't ready for what the Jets have to offer. Doesn't really matter. They're winning. However, it could also just be that the Packers aren't good this year. Their offense is not nearly up to par right now. They can run the ball decently with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, obviously. Those are 2 great running backs. But in today's league, you have to be able to do more than that. And their rookie receivers and their like replacement receivers that they brought in the offseason are just not. They're not cutting it. You know, Aaron Rodgers said after the game they need to simplify the offense. That's a bad sign. This is usually around the time of year when Like the simple mistakes should be fixed. And now we're getting into much more like complicated like wrinkles that you bring in, because this is around the time of year that defenses have tape on you and they're ready to counter like all the stuff you were doing. So if they if they aren't ready to add more to their offense at this point in the year, it could get even worse. Their defense is what I'm really concerned about. Their defense was lauded as one of the most talented units in the league coming into the year, and they play so hot and cold that it's really, really not good. It's losing them games at this point. I would have thought that their defense against the Jets would be able to hold up better than this. 27 points to the Jets is still way too many, especially given that Garrett Wilson and Zach Wilson don't seem to be on the same page yet. So it's not like there's a ton of like receiving threats going around, but Breece Hall had a great like touchdown in this game. The Jets defense has just put the clamps on Green Bay, and the Jets like managed to out physical the Packers to a win. The Packers, I am just like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I am like slamming the panic button for these teams. In the NFC, it's not as dire. They still might make the playoffs. However, they need to get it together really quickly. I don't know that they will. Aaron Rodgers can say, Aaron Rodgers isn't even breaking out his like relax thing. I think Aaron Rodgers knows that this is a problem. And yeah, there's trouble in Titletown right now. But good for the Jets. I mean, this got to be the first time in years where all three New York teams have winning records. So good for them. New York City and the state of New York on the whole, they can actually enjoy watching football right now. So good for them. Minnesota at Miami, Vikings 24, Dolphins 16. Not a ton to say about this game. The Dolphins don't have quarterbacks at all, basically. Their third string guy left the game with a hand injury. Teddy came in and didn't play great. He also didn't practice much this week. Minnesota wins. They did what they're supposed to. The Vikings advanced to 5-1 sort of by default right here. And yeah, I mean, it's like, hey, Minnesota, they did what they're supposed to do. You beat a team that's down and hurt. But I expect, I mean, the Vikings though, man, they're interesting. They might get to like 7-1, 8-1, maybe something like that, just by like virtue of their opponents. Which, hey, you can only play the teams that you play, but it keeps a lot of question marks hovering around Minnesota. Of the one time we saw them play a legit team, they got smacked by Philly. So I don't really know what the Vikings are in terms of a contender, but they're definitely a playoff team. With the way the Packers are playing, I feel really strongly about them managing to win the NFC North. Good on them. Yeah, not a ton to say about this game. The healthy team won like they were supposed to. So good job. I heard Tua is supposed to come back next week, though. That's when we can really start evaluating Miami again. Carolina at the Rams. Carolina 10, Rams 24. This game was way too close for way too long. The Rams are not a team that figured it out and fixed themselves against the Panthers. They got the win. You damn well better get the win against, I mean, seriously, the Panthers. But this game was like 10-10 for a long time. I think the Panthers even took a lead into the half or something like that. Robbie Anderson, as one of my biggest takeaways, I said he will be gone. He is gone, now traded to the Cardinals. That had to happen. He couldn't stay. I mean, it's just all bad in Carolina. It's all bad. Carolina's like, they are on a collision course for the first overall pick, whether it be Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. They will be getting a quarterback, and they will be in a full-blown rebuild with whoever they bring in. So, I mean, good for the Rams. You got the win, but this is the type of win that I'm not feeling particularly like optimistic coming out of. You know what I mean? Where it felt like this should have been a big win if you're a contender, like the way Buffalo beat the Steelers last week. And it wasn't. In fact, Carolina gave the Rams a lot, like all they could handle for a lot of this game. But they're back in the win column. They're 3-3, right? Yeah. They're back to 500. So good for the Rams. Carolina, accept that it's going to be bad and just hold the course. I would sell off pieces like Christian McCaffrey. You're not going to get 2 first-round picks like they're asking for, though, so I'd lower that asking price. You'll be lucky to get a first-round pick. Maybe there's some poor sap that really just doesn't need their picks and is going to say screw it. But, yeah, Carolina, it's all bad. Next up, Cardinals at Seahawks. Arizona 9, Seattle 19. Seattle finally found their defense. Not really. The Cardinals are just not good on offense. They're going to be getting DeAndre Hopkins back, I think, this week or next week. And then they bring in Robbie Anderson. So maybe this reload helps them to show some sign of life on offense. But it's also around that time of year now where the Cardinals take their usual tank. And God, I just don't know what to think of them. I don't think they're making the playoffs. I don't think they're going to be bad enough to get a super high draft pick. But this game was also just Seattle. They maintain being feisty. They rise up to 3-3 as well. I think that the Seahawks may actually be better than the Rams. I'm not super confident in saying that, but Seattle has shown more fight than the Rams have for the most part. I think that with the injuries to the 49ers, we're at the point that we have to start looking at the rest of the NFC West and saying, can they overtake San Francisco? I don't think individually, if they play the 49ers, I don't think the Rams or Seahawks would beat them. But San Fran's got Kansas City coming down the pipe, and that means that Seattle and LA both have a chance to reclaim the top spot in the NFC West. So we'll see. I think Arizona will remain the bottom feeder or the basement dweller in this division for a while, and Seattle will keep playing these close games, these crazy games, and winning a couple of them. So good for the Seahawks. They beat a team that they were supposed to beat. Geno Smith continues to play way better than any of us thought he would, which is, I actually don't mind that. I think Geno Smith sort of got a raw deal with the two New York teams. And then, he didn't get a raw deal with the Chargers. He was just playing for teams that had established quarterbacks at that point. But, Seattle, they get the win. Good on them. Not a ton to say about that game, really. It sort of went according to plan. Now, on to what was my game of the week, personally. Buffalo at Kansas City. Bills win 24-20. It was an awesome game. I am happy it went this way. I prefer this type of game to a shootout because this was the type of game where it was legitimately good offense and good defense. These two teams, I don't care that Kansas City lost. The Bills and the Chiefs look to be the best two teams in the NFL. You can say what you want about Philly. I just get a different type of feeling watching the Bills and the Chiefs. This, I think, is the AFC Championship preview, or at least is the AFC Championship we all deserve. And Buffalo proves to be the best team in the league. I hope that if they play again, the game is in Buffalo, because right now they've had to play the last three in Kansas City. And the Bills are 2-1 in those three. We all know the one. Josh Allen played out of his mind. Patrick Mahomes had his fair share of amazing plays. And the thing that I think I enjoyed the most about this game was how it ended, which is minute left, or it was roughly a minute left, but you get to the 2-minute warning, the Bills are driving, and everyone's, of course, thinking, okay, they're going to try to score with no time left on the clock, give the Chiefs no chance. And the Bills end up scoring a touchdown to take the lead with about 1:10 left. And at this point, everyone's thinking, wow, they're going to give Mahomes a chance to go get this thing with a minute. He did it with 13 seconds, yada, 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 yada. But I love the fact that the Bills said, we're confident in our defense. We think we'll stop them. They haven't been able to really drive and score on us a ton of the game. And it ended up being hey, 13 minutes, 13 seconds, interception, ball game. I think that they exercised a lot of the demons in Kansas City. And, it was a great win. It was a win that asserted that the Bills are the best team in the league right now. And health withstanding, I think they'll remain the best team in the league. These two teams feel like they're on a collision course. And I can't wait for the rematch because it feels like whichever one of these two gets out of that will win the Super Bowl. So good on them. No, there's nothing to talk about in terms of the Chiefs being bad. Neither of these teams got punked. Both these teams held their own. It was the game we all wanted, and it was the game we got. So awesome, amazing game. These two will play again. They feel like they're a cut above everybody else, and I say that with a lot of confidence. All right, we're going to get on to the last two games of the week here. First up, Sunday night, Dallas at Philly, Dallas 17, Philly 26. I mean, Philly remains undefeated, going to 6-0. But Dallas's defense arguably won the battle with the Eagles' offense. I mean, Philly got out ahead, but then couldn't keep putting up points. Like, Dallas ended up shutting them down for the most part. And this is a game that I think really reaffirmed Dallas needs Dak Prescott back. I think he's coming back this week with 2 easier games coming up than the bye week. I think that's a nice runway for Dak to get back into this thing. It felt like the type of game, though, that if Dak played, Dallas really had a good shot at winning. Philly has had this tendency of playing a really good half of football. Either they jump on you and then they sort of let you back, but ultimately close you out, or they've started slow and then fire back fiercely in the second half. I need to see Philly put together a full game against a good team. That's why I think Kansas City and Buffalo are just a cut above them, because those two teams have been able to just, in spite of having a loss or 2 losses, those two teams have really just put it on people for entire games, and Philly hasn't done that a ton. I mean, Philly is good, and I think they're the best in the NFC, definitely. And they're the most consistent in the NFC by a mile. But this game showed that they are not invincible. Dallas was able to do a lot against them. And yeah, man, I think that this is a game I'm really excited to see when Dak plays. There's a good chance this is the NFC Championship that we saw today, or that we saw on Sunday. And it feels like it'd be a worthy one. I still think that whoever comes out of this game is going to get smoked by Kansas City or hopefully Buffalo. I think if either one of these teams play Buffalo, Buffalo will beat the crap out of them. But yeah, it was a good game. I wish this was a game. I wish Dak came back against the Rams and this was the second game. But I also understand that you need him for the long haul. Dallas was playing with house money, and they lost the game. Fine. They were feisty. Good on them. I look forward to the rematch of this game more than I do this one, or more than I did this first matchup. So we'll see. Philly remains 6-0 though. Awesome. Good on them. I'm going to have to really look at their schedule to see where I think the losses may come. But yeah, NFC East, who would have thought, looks like the best division in football. On to the Monday night game, another Denver primetime game. Thank God, right? I know it's what we all wanted, and it's what we all got. Thank goodness. Denver at the Chargers. Denver 16, Chargers 19. Broncos, they showed early signs of life, but it wasn't enough. They couldn't sustain it. Awesome first quarter, going up 10-0. Russell Wilson 10 of 10. They looked like they figured it out in the first quarter, and then it just never worked again. The Chargers win, but they continue to underwhelm me. These last 2 weeks with the Browns game and this game, these were games the Chargers should have won and won convincingly, and they don't. In fact, they were really, really lucky to win both of these games. The Browns game, obviously, missed field goal by the Browns to lose the game. Not great. And then this week, it goes to overtime with the Broncos, and it takes really what I think is sort of a bullshit, muffed punt, for them to get into position. I mean, yeah, I don't think I think the Chargers they feel like a team that might make the playoffs, but they're going to be one and done. And personally, if I'm a Chargers fan, if I'm Chargers ownership, there's a lot of rumors that Sean Payton would want to coach the Chargers. I would be completely willing to switch out Brandon Staley for Sean Payton today. I don't know that you do it because you're 4-2. You might make the playoffs, all that stuff. But there is a lot more that can be gotten from this Chargers offense. They don't use Justin Herbert the way he should be used, and he sort of makes great plays in spite of the coaching and the offense and the scheme and all that stuff. I would love to see Sean Payton get his hands on Justin Herbert. And so, I mean, honestly, just looking forward, that's what I'm most looking. I mean, I've thought the Chargers were going to be good for a few years now. I don't think they're that good. They're at 4-2, but a lot of it is by the mistakes of their opponents and not their own merit. So it is what it is. Both these teams feel like they're not, there's something off. There's some black cat running around that Chargers building. It's running under ladders, it's shattering mirrors, it's doing all this stuff, and they can't shake it. Even though they're winning, they can't put it together, and I don't think they're going to this year. I think they're going to get bounced pretty quickly if they make the playoffs. So, and Denver's obviously not doing much. Maybe the Broncos keep progressing, because definitely that first quarter was a sign of progress, but there was just nothing else. They ran out of gas, which is alarming. But at this point, I think it's sort of what we expect from the Broncos. But yeah, that is my instant reactions to this weekend's games. I'll be breaking them down in greater detail on the show coming out on Wednesday. So tune in for a more in-depth breakdown then. And then coming out on Tuesday, Tuesday also, I'll be doing my contenders pretenders list. So stay tuned for that. Have a good night. Peace.